I want to make sure that we really get back into where are we at in the process. Because again, you know, my job, our job at Owl Sledge, with the Owl Sledge team, is to simplify this as much as we possibly can, is to just really try to give you direction and focus, and how do we make this a more manageable and straightforward process, especially with all sorts of other competing priorities going on in your life. So I want to take us back to something that you've seen many times before, again, just to give you an idea where we're at in the process, and you know, where you've come from, where you're at today, and where you're going in the very, very near future here. So this is my pinwheel. All of you at this point in time, so starting with the CPLP Certification Handbook and really getting a handle on the requirements and going through all of the documentation, including all of the appendices that are relevant to work product, you should be past that by now. Now, you're going to keep that handy. You're going to keep it by your side anytime you're working on work product, because there's a lot of detail there. There's a lot of complexity there. So you're going to reference that material a lot. And if you find that you're doing that, then again, that's good. That's good. You're not, there's no, you know, that's common across the candidates. I know actually many candidates, as a best practice, some people will actually take like flip chart paper and they'll write out some things that they want to really make sure that they're attentive to. Sometimes it's critical flaws or pitfalls. Sometimes it's some, you know, random requirement. You know, sometimes it's, you know, pieces of evidence that it is that they're still trying to track down, anything like that. But I know a lot of people will do flip chart paper and actually hang that flip chart paper either up in their cubicle or around their desk or in their office or dining room or in the kitchen or wherever it is that you need that to be close and visible as you're going through this particular part of the process. So, you know, there's that piece of it. But keep the handbook handy. The next thing, too, again, so basic requirements, you should all be past this right now. I mean, everybody on the phone, you know that all the materials have to be submitted in English. That includes the evidence documentation. That includes the responses to the essay questions. And for those of you doing training delivery, and you've done training delivery in a language other than English, then the full translation of that training session also has to be provided and documented in English as well. But you all know at this point, too, it's got to be your own work that you're submitting, and your own work is going to vary depending on the area of expertise that you're submitting for. So we talked, just as a touch point, we talked a little bit last week, like instructional design, like one of the big differences between instructional design and managing learning programs is instructional design. It was your fingers on the keyboard creating the materials that you're then providing as evidence, whereas with managing learning programs, it was material that even if it wasn't your fingers on the keyboard, it was done under your oversight. It was done under your direction and done under your oversight. So that's a distinguishing, that's a distinction or differentiation between those two particular areas of expertise. And you know that it has to be material that was created within the past 5 years, And I think for the most part, in the conversations, the interactions that I've had the pleasure of having direct with some of you and then also with the calls, is I think for the most part, everybody's submitting something that's really fairly new or something that is a project that's been in process while you've been going through this work product process. So I don't think anybody's got any issues with that 5-year mark. Components, now again, I want to reiterate the components. So we've got the work samples, work sample also otherwise known as evidence, essay responses, and you've started on the essay responses. So we started with the project forms last week. We'll go into performance forms this week. The work product map is optional, and it's a trick that I'm going to show you today. I think it's really very handy. I think it's a way of really kind of getting your arms around the evidence and the work samples that you have, and just being able to catalog it, and then making sure later on as you're pulling your package together, it becomes a really good tool for ticking and tying, and we'll go through that in a little bit. And then the different types of forms. So you've got the project, so the essay forms are broken out into the project forms, the performance forms, and then you also have admin forms, and then you have this new thing. This is new as of February 2015. You've got a cover sheet form that is also part of your submission. So, when you're really trying to picture what is work product, it's a collection of documentation that goes into a shipping envelope and gets sent to the testing center. I mean, that's really what it is. And with the exception of the folks submitting for training delivery, everybody else's material, with the exception of that recording and only for the folks with training delivery, everything else is paper-based. Everything else is hard copy. You're not allowed to submit any other evidence in an electronic format other than, again, candidates submitting under training delivery and only for their recording, only for the 20-minute recording. So a question for all of you. So the admin forms, you have contact forms, and then what's another set of forms that you have under the administrative forms, under the admin forms? What's another set of forms that you need to be attentive to there? And I'm either listening on the phone or looking at the chat. Michelle, nice job. Yeah, the permission forms, those release forms. That's exactly right. So remind me, what release forms? Yeah, Michelle, so you've got so you're doing training delivery, so you've got a video release form. What are some of the other release forms in the different areas of expertise that you have to submit? Yep, very nice. I'm seeing the sponsor release form. Yep, and you all have, regardless of area of expertise, the candidate release form. Yep, thank you, Virginia. Nice, the participant release form. And for the training delivery folks, right, you need to make sure that you've got sign-off from everybody who participated in the session that you're submitting, whether they show up on camera or not. Okay? So release forms, when can you get release forms done? When can you get your release forms signed? We're doing a little bit of what Bob Pike would call a revisit here. Anytime, ASAP. That's exactly right. That's awesome. Awesome. Nice job. Okay. Very cool. All right. And then swinging around the pinwheel here, so we'll do a little bit more in depth on scoring today because, again, I really want you to understand that process. Oh, Michelle, that's a good question. Does the video person need to sign it? Unless that person is an actual participant in the class, no, they don't need to sign it. That's a great question. So scoring, so we'll talk more about scoring today because I want you to understand some of the challenges with that. And then pitfalls and critical flaws. Where can you find, where can you find the pitfalls and the critical flaws for your area of expertise? Where should you look? What do you think? Where would you find this information? Specific to your area of expertise. In the handbook, in the appendix, yep. Which appendix? Because you have many appendices that you've got to read. Anna, you've got it right. So the appendix that is specific to your area of expertise. So if you're doing training delivery, then that's going to be Appendix J. You haven't printed it out. No, that's good. No, that's awesome. So the appendix that is specific to your area of expertise, because you have some appendices that are shared, right? I mean, you've got the scoring rubric appendix has all of the rubrics, contains all of the rubrics across the different areas of expertise. You've got the key actions appendix, which again contains all of the key actions across all of the areas of expertise. But pitfalls and critical flaws are in the appendix that's specific to your area of expertise. Nice job. And then packaging requirements and shipping information and final forms, that's also going to be along with your specific area of expertise because there are slightly different packaging instructions depending on your area of expertise. Again, slightly different depending on your area of expertise. But then the information as far as the address, the shipping address that you send this to, the shipping address that you're going to send this to is to the testing center. It is not to ATD, okay? So make sure that you use, when you're ready for that, that you send this to the right shipping address, which is going to be the one that's contained, again, within the handbook, within the appendix specific to your area of expertise. And then deadline. So the deadline, we know the deadline at the end of February. When is it, remind me, when is it that you'll get notification of your status for work product? When will you receive notification of your score for work product and your status as a candidate? Yeah, nice job, everybody. April. That's exactly right. So you're going to submit at the end of, you're going to submit by the end of February. And then what will happen is the rater workshop, so when all the raters get together for a long weekend, that won't happen until the end of March. So the Certification Institute, when you put your work product submission into its shipping envelope and send it to the test center, when it gets received on that side, what they're going to do is the receiving people are going to separate the documentation. So what do I mean by that? I mean that they're going to pull out all of the identifying information. So all of the forms, the admin forms, like the release forms and the contact form and all of that kind of stuff, anything that has identifying information on it, they're going to put that separate from the forms for your essay responses, like your project form and your performance form and your evidence. So the way that they have you package everything when you put it all into the envelope is that the Certification Institute is going to have you sequence the materials in a way that makes that receiving piece at the testing center easier for them. Now why? Well, because the raters, when the raters go to review and evaluate and score a work product submission, it's meant to be an anonymous process, right? So the only thing that the raters are going to see is that they're going to see your written responses to the essay. So they're going to see your project forms and your performance forms, and then they're going to see your packet of evidence. Yeah, Karina, that's a great number. So when do we get our ID number? Maybe we received it already with your registration. You do. And actually the ID number that they have on file for you is your candidate ID, which, good call, that's going to go on every piece of documentation that you send in. So every page of your work product is going to contain your candidate ID on it. And if you don't know your candidate ID number is on your knowledge exam score report. And if for whatever reason you can't find your score report, you can contact the Certification Institute and make sure that you have the right number. Yeah. Is that helpful? Good question. And let me take you back for a moment too, because I just want to take us back into this for a moment with those administrative forms. The contact form is really, really important. The contact form is really important. So the contact is going to be your basic contact information. But one of the elements of contact information that they're going to look for is your email address. Now, it could be any email address that you want, but here, best practice from my point of view, you want to use an email address that you can receive on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I'm going to tell you why in just a moment. So here in the United States, our weekends are Saturday and Sunday. Our work week goes from Monday to Friday. That's not the case in every part of the world. The rater workshop, when I talk about that rater workshop and it happening over one long weekend, I mean a long weekend here in the United States. So the raters all get together. The leads that are the team captains, if you will, they fly in on a Thursday night and they start getting everything together. And then the rest of the team shows up on a Friday morning. And then from Friday midday until Sunday late, they score all the work product in one long weekend. And if they need to get a hold of a candidate because of something, if the Certification Institute needs to get a hold of a candidate during that process because there's something unclear or there's material missing or they can't get, a recording to play or something along those lines, the only way that they're going to attempt to contact you is the email address that you have on that contact form. And so that's why I'm saying out of all of the different email addresses that you could probably put on that contact form, use one that you know you would have access to on a Saturday or Sunday. You'll also, the Certification Institute usually tells candidates in a particular cohort when that rater weekend is scheduled so that you have it on your calendar so that again, that you're just sort of attentive to, that you have an awareness that that's going on. And so, again, that's one of the things about the contact form. So use an email address that you've got some access to, especially on a Saturday and Sunday. You'll also, another thing that I want to make sure is that that email address will also be the email address that when the testing center receives your work product submission and, you know, you're waiting, right? You're a little anxious that you gave it to a shipping carrier and that it needs to make it from wherever you are in the world to Virginia. The only way that the testing center is going to notify you that it was received is also by email. So email is really, really critical. Email is really critical with that contact form. And if you decide to use one email just for this process and you want to change your email address that the Certification Institute has on file afterwards, then do that afterwards. But use something that's going to be easy now. And for many of us, you know, a lot of times that's a personal email. Because you also want to make sure that it's going to be an email address. It's going to avoid a spam filter. You know, you don't want the Certification Institute's messages getting lost somewhere. Virginia, that's a great question. You can use either. There's no anonymity. The raters are not going to see your name in the email address. I just sometimes, you know, depending on access, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter personal email or business email. It just matters an email that you would make sure that you could get to. Yeah, and Beth, that's a great point. I mean, and you, I mean, in your circumstance, you know, you knew that that email address was not going to, you know, be in effect after a certain amount of time. So that's another thing to consider as well. Awesome. Good questions.